You all have probably known about the new generation of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. It has, for one reason or another, become an overnight sensation. Whether or not you like the show yourself, you have to admit that its success is impressive.
However, it raises a question. Warren Foss has worked other popular shows, and it has been working on her own line of toys. The Galaxy Girls, however, did she wind up creating the remake of some 80s toy commercial instead of working on her own show ideas. It could be that she's nostalgic about her childhood My Little Pony toys or something. But even then, what artist wouldn't rather work on their own ideas?
I read this news story a few years ago about 6 girls who all went to the same school and died on the same day, January 18th, 1989. A friend of mine from NC sent me the article from a small local newspaper. I forgot about it until I was watching a few episodes of My Little Pony and realized that the main characters are surprisingly similar to the girls who died. I decided to look for that article again, but the paper had either gone shut down or I misremembered the name. So I tried tracking down my old World of Warcraft buddy and asked him for the article. Turned out he happened to have the file saved to his computer. And I was right. There's a definite connection here.
The first girl, named Samantha Gales, was obviously the inspiration for Fluttershy, a shy, overrated girl. What her classmates didn't know what she is constantly abused at home by her mother and stepfather. Her mother conceived her at age 15 and blamed poor Samantha for ruining her life. This made Samantha self-conscious. When her stepfather moved in, this made the neglect worsen, right? Her stepfather never liked having to take care of Samantha when her mother was away, so he would lock her in the basement and leave her sometimes for the whole day. Her mother tolerated this, and as she grew, would hit Samantha for talking out of turn. When her half-sister was born, the abuse became considerably worse. She would be starved, forced to sleep outside, and sometimes beaten outright. Because she's dressed in shabby clothes and had low self-esteem, she was often picked on by other kids at school. Her only friends were animals she would rescue, which family would make her get rid of. She committed suicide by overdosing Valium.
The second girl, named Janice Walters, was one of the popular girls. She was rich, smart, and beautiful, and seemed to live the charmed life. However, her parents argued constantly and were really only together for appearances. She was held up to a high standard, which made her a perfectionist. She wanted to be a designer and live in Paris, but her parents wanted her to remain in Carolina and marry a proper man, one of good breeding and high income. For the most part, her parents ignored her. Her parents' only concern was appearing rich and of high social standing. But in reality, her mother married her father because of money, and since he had accumulated so much debt, they had been losing money fast. This is what got her interested in fashion. Initially, since she started making her own fashionable clothes to maintain the appearance of wealth. She died in a car crash when her mother and father got into another argument over money while he was driving. Her neck snapped on impact, and she died instantly. She was clearly inspiration for Rarity. What? Then there was Alexandra Matthews. Alex was a competitive girl. She always sought to be the best of the best, especially at sports, track in particular. Her father always wanted a boy, and since her mother was declared incapable of having another child, he decided to raise her as if she was his son. In the end, though, she loved her mother and father, and was more than happy to play sports with her father. She excelled at them even. This made her popular, and by the time she was in high school, was being sought out by the athletic scouts from colleges all over the country. This made her try even harder. She had always wanted to compete in the Olympics, however. When she was 15, her mother, who had been told she could never have another child, had a son. After that, her parents didn't pay very much attention to her, which made her more determined to succeed. She started taking she ended up pushing herself so hard at track she neglected her friends, her grades, and even her personal health. At one point, she became so desperate that she started taking steroids. What her and her family didn't know was that she had a minor heart condition that the steroids worsened. And she was pushing herself so physically hard as well. She ended up collapsing during a match due to a heart complication. She died in a hospital a few days later. In the show, Rainbow Dash seems the most similar. Alright.
The girl most similar to Applejack, Jamie Sanders, was a farm girl just like the character based off of her. What the show didn't include that her farm was run down and her family was struggling with money. She oftentimes worked odd jobs under the table trying to help support her family. She had
Sorry, I just had to do that.
brothers and sisters, and she was the second. Whatever, where am I at? She helped to support her family, and she had many brothers and sisters, and she was the second, which made it was up to her and her brother to take care of the youngins. This meant she didn't have enough time to hang out with her friends or take any extracurricular activities or even do her homework. And most nights she had an aunt whom her family from Manhattan was based off, who kept offering to send money to support her mother and father, but they were proud and always refused. But that until her father died from a heart attack in 1987. Her mother followed shortly after, having killed herself when she couldn't handle the pressure of taking care of all the children. They were taken in by their senile grandma, who was incapable of truly taking care of them. Jaylene herself oftentimes helped out with the family's yard work to keep her family afloat. She died when she fell into a wood chipper.
Pinkie Pie's inspiration was probably the saddest story. Katherine Jackson was a foster child who had moved from home to home. Her birth father killed her mother and himself in a fit of rage when she was 5, and she could never quite settle into a good home. Some of the foster families who would take her in were merely interested in the financial support of adopting a child would bring, and would refuse to feed or clothe her. Even when she was in a nice home with a good family, the old memories still haunted her, breaking her fragile sanity into a million pieces. She would have nightmares of her mother screaming and bleeding, and her father screaming at her, claiming to be after her next. By the time she was in high school, she had completely snapped. She started to hallucinate and act out in class. Many of the other kids and even teachers assumed she was merely hyperactive and trying to be funny. She oftentimes would paint and draw and write about fascinational things and dress in the over-top clothing. All the while her condition was getting worse and worse.